Hello, and welcome to North Country Matters. I'm Bess Kirnie, member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today, we're hosting a conversation with Mary Jones, Director of Family Support Services for Hospice and Palliative Care of St. Lawrence Valley. For those who know her, Mary is the angel who swoops in, my words, with a smile to guide us through life's most confusing issue, its end, and to give us the words and the wisdom we need to begin to cope with loss. We're calling this program Being Mortal after the recent book by Dr. Atul Gawande, and our target audience today is those people who will someday die. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Bess.
Would you please tell us more about the work of Dr. Gawande and how hospice is currently reaching out to the community?
Being Mortal, his book is tremendously interesting, scary, and something that when we first learned about it, we wanted to start sharing with the community. Last year at this time, the Hospice Foundation of America let us know about a grant from the John and Juana Harmon Foundation that wanted the Being Mortal book and frontline presentation to be put out into the communities around the United States. We were initially one of 900 hospices around the country that offered this. To date, we've offered 3 programs around the county. We've got 2 more planned. And it's really about having the conversation about end of life. What is it that we want at the end of life? The frontline presentation that you can find on PBS, and actually there'll be a list of resources at the end of this presentation. It really looks at how the medical profession and our culture itself really struggles with end of life. We want to believe that there's always something that can be done. And there isn't. There is no cure for death. We are all going to die. It's a question of when and where and how. And we are a culture that doesn't like talking about it. We're very uncomfortable about that. What I find, I teach death and dying over at Potsdam State, is that for the 20 to 25-year-olds that I teach, that they feel that this is a really important conversation. They are asked to write their obituaries. They're asked to put their final wishes together. And what they tell me consistently over the last 10 years is that this is incredibly helpful. I feel that I now can live my life. A lot of people don't want to focus on end of life because it's so sad and maudlin. But when you get your affairs all together, you really are, it's an opportunity to live your life, which is really important.
Sort of freeing.
It's very liberating, I think is what they would say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I attended the Being Mortal hospice presentation in Messina recently. I was impressed and moved by the video, but also by the candor of the public discussion. It was
amazing.
It was amazing. So, as difficult as that may have been, how important and difficult is it for us to engage in that same kind of conversation with the people close to us, our families, our friends?
I think it's very important. I think that what I'm seeing over the last couple of years is that there's a real hunger for this conversation. A good friend, Linda Potter, offers a death cafe twice a year over at the First Presbyterian Church in Canton. She has one coming up in April, and there's the initial curiosity of, what do you talk about at a death cafe? And then they're just so thrilled to be there, to have the opportunity to have a discussion. And you're literally just going in and talking about death. The Being Mortal is, actually I would say Messina was very impressive in their candor about talking about it. I think nobody wants to talk about it, so when you have that opportunity, and when you're faced with those issues in your own life, you do want to talk about it. I think what we learned in Messina is that people want to know what it is that they're going to do at the end of life. One of the things that we bring with us on these presentations is 5 wishes. And 5 Wishes is really an opportunity for people to sit down and think about what is it that they want at the end of life, and what is it that they don't want. I think a lot of people feel that we're just going to wing it as we go along. And what Atul Gawande says most poignantly in his book and on the DVD is that hope is not a plan. And we want it to be the plan. We want to hope. Hope is a wish. We wish that everything's going to turn out the way we want, but that's not the way life works. I think a lot of people bemoan the fact that life isn't fair. Why did it happen to them? They've lived a good life. What did they do to deserve this? There's other people out there that deserve this. It's not about living a good life. It's not about deserving. It's about our own biology and how we live our lives, and how when we get a disease or our body is really slowing down because of chronic illness, how does that impact us, and what is it that we want to have at the end of life? Atul Gawande's book really talks about that quality versus quantity. Do you want quality of life at the end of life, or do you want quantity? Do you want everything, every measure done humanly possible to save your life? Or do you want to, draw the line in the sand and say, I've gone as far as I can go? If you read obituaries today, you hear about this heroic fight that people have waged on their disease. They died a hero in their fight against cancer. What I think is important for people to understand is that cancer is no longer the #1 killer out there that we all believe that it is. When I started Hospice 23 years ago, cancer was 95% of our clients that we had, our patients. Today it's only about 49%, which is a drastic change. And people often say, Mary, isn't this great? They're eradicating cancer. You're going to be out of a job. It's like, no, because we're still going to die, but we're going to die of something different. And we're starting to see that with more end-stage heart disease, lung disease. They don't have cancer, but they have enough disease. The disease in them is actually killing them. So it's about having the conversations about what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want. Who is going to be your healthcare proxy? Again, in talking with my students, they say, well, one of them said, well, if you don't like what they've decided, how do you break the news that you're going to change what their decision is? And I said, well, first of all, healthcare proxy requires that the person may not be able to talk and converse. You're making that decision for them. So it's what are you going to tell them? And why? The bigger question is, why aren't you going to honor it? As I was telling you earlier in my class last week, we were talking about Atul Gawande's book, and I asked the class, who here wants to have quality of life or quality of life? And most of them raised their hands, quality of life. And I said, well, okay, so that looks like we want our wishes to be honored. We've made them all out, we want them honored. And I said, okay, so you're going home on break. Tell me, your father has a DNR, and he has made it very clear he does not want any resuscitation at all. And you're home on Sunday, and he collapses in front of you. What do you do? And their immediate response is, well, we would get him help. I said, but his wish is that you don't. And there was crickets in the room. And I think it really goes to that we need to be having these conversations to decide what it is that we want and we don't want. And how do we honor that? If somebody doesn't want a DNR, how do we honor that? With the same token, how do we honor somebody who wants everything done? We're not here to say one way is better than the other. What we're here to say is make those decisions before you're really sick, before you get to that point where you don't care, or you're so afraid of dying that you're willing to do anything and everything. You're willing to search the entire world for that cure that does not exist. So there's challenges.
Yes, and just thinking back to watching television as recently as this morning, there's so much telling us that there's more out there, there are more drugs, there's a new cure, there's a center, there's our culture is giving us constant cues. Don't give up, don't give up.
Right.
Is this a conversation that is difficult in every culture, or?
No, it seems to be the American culture struggles with this. And I think what his book talks about very succinctly is that we need to be having dialogues with our primary care providers. We can't go in thinking that they have all the answers and we're just going to say yes to everything. I think we need to be laying out for them, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. Tell me how we're going to work together on this, as opposed to having just a one-way conversation. The primary physicians should be finding out from you what is it that you want. Ironically, the death panel business has come up again, and the death panel really was a conversation about advance directives. That's what it specifically cites, that they wanted doctors to talk to their Medicare patients about what they wanted at end of life, and somehow that evolved into death panels. What we really want is to have everyone have an opportunity to voice what they want. There's no judgment here. If you want everything done, great. But really what Atul is saying is that you need to be having the conversations. He has actually in the back of the book a list of questions you should be asking your doctor. We need to be better healthcare consumers. We need to be engaged and not just go in and say, fix me. We have an expectation that they're going to go in and be able to fix everything. If you watch the frontline presentation, you discover that these docs really are struggling profoundly. And Atul talks about that in his book, how he really thought if you just told him, yep, there's another thing we can try, but knowing full well that it's not going to work, he started to feel guilt about that. And he talked specifically about a woman who was pregnant and discovered she had stage 4 lung cancer. And instead of allowing her to, they jumped at every opportunity for treatment. And in the end, afterwards, and the husband is on Frontline talking about it, we should have let her have more time with the baby. It reached the point where she couldn't even hold the baby and bond with it because they were so focused on treatment, when Atul knew that that wasn't going to do anything. And I pose that question to my students. When we go into the doctor and say, the doctor says you have lung cancer, you have a 20% chance of surviving, and here are the ways that you can do that. We hear there's 20% chance. What we don't hear, there's an 80% chance that we're going to die. What is it that we want at end of life? If you're 85 years old and you discover you have lung cancer and you have a 20% survival rate, what is it that you want? The same question is asked if you're 50 or if you're 40. Right now we're seeing a large swing of the number, the ages of the people that we're serving on hospice, as young as babies all the way to 107. So what is it that you want at the end of life? Obviously you can't ask a baby that, but the parents, what is it that they want?
Right. And from what you're saying and from what Dr. Gawande is saying, the doctors themselves are sort of complicit.
Yes.
In promising, maybe there's a cure, maybe there's a way to lengthen your life.
Right.
And so it's an education process on both sides.
Absolutely.
I suppose. Talk to me about the Conversation Project. What is that?
The Conversation Project is similar to 5 Wishes, and actually a very interesting concept. Again, you can find it online, and it really walks you through having that conversation with your loved ones. Here are the questions that you need to be answering yourself that you're going to share with them, and that has conversation prompts of what it is, how you can initiate this conversation. What we see at hospice is how you live is how you die. So we know there's always going to be families that are simply unable to have that conversation, and there will be silence about that. Whereas other families, they want to have a conversation about that, and it just walks you through everything you need to consider. Do you want food and hydration at the end of life, which I think is a huge struggle for people. We don't want anybody dying of thirst. We don't want anybody dying of hunger. What we don't understand is the body starts to die, it no longer can process that food. I often hear people say, well, they need to keep up their strength. The food is not giving them strength, it's actually making them weaker. The same thing holds true for hydration. Drinking a lot of water or whatever it is that they're consuming doesn't always help. I think that we always offer, but we have to be okay when they say, no, I'm not hungry, or I don't have anything to drink. I think that's the hard part. But nobody's starving or dying of thirst. When you're dying, your body starts to slow down and it can't process. And the same token, people say, come on, you got to fight harder. We don't control our bodies in the way we think we do. We can't tell our body to stop dying, just stop. Our body's going through the check system, and we're turning off the lights, and we have no control over that. No, wait, turn that light back on. We can't do that because our body knows how to die, just how it knows how to give birth to a baby. You think that you're in control when you're in labor and delivery, and if you stop and think about it, your body knows what to do. You have to go along with the body. You can't tell the body, no, I don't want you to do it this way, I want you to do it that way. So it's also having conversations about how we age and how we die and what that process looks like. There's not many people that want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I love talking about it, but not everyone else does.
Well, you said something interesting, and this was in the context of being mortal in the Messina event. And who was it that said, or maybe it was you, you are alive until you die.
Right.
And it's up to the individual to choose what you do until that moment.
Right.
So we're all, as you say, we're all dying.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
And hopefully it's not under the influence of chronic pain or terminal illness,
Right.
although you never know.
Right.
So how do you, in our culture, make that choice between quality, quantity, or some kind of a balance, knowing that you have to be alive until you die?
Right, and I love that. It comes from Barbara Carnes, and she talks about you're alive until the very end when you take your last breath, and then you're dead. You're alive, you're dead. I think what everyone needs to keep in mind, this is an individual process. No two people die the same way. And so no two people are going to want the same things. What does that look like? And I think that you have to decide, what does your end of life care look like? For those who come onto hospice, we're looking to manage your symptoms and your pain as much as possible so that you can live life to the fullest. And I think in Messina I told two stories. One about a woman that really wanted to go out and play bingo one more time, and she was physically unable to do that. So we brought bingo to her. The team that was assigned to her went to her home. They had games and prizes for her. They played bingo a couple, I think 2 or 3 times, and they gave the chaplain who was the bingo caller great grief because he hadn't done that before. So there was a lot of laughter there. That meant a lot to that patient, as it did to that family. Another story was a woman that really wanted to go to the casino one more time. The social worker took her. After 6 hours, the social worker called me and said, "Oh my gosh, she doesn't want to leave. She's having too good a time." I said, "Oh, that's awesome, but you need to be moving on." And I said, tell her, one more hour. And the social worker went back the following week to find out that she was actively dying. And her words to the social worker is, "Thank you so much. I so much loved what we were able to do there." So that's really about living life to the very end. We're not modeling and saying, "Oh my gosh, you're dying." It's, what do you want to do? What are your end of life wishes what's your bucket list that we could do right here from your home?
Yeah. Yeah. And hospice is a wonderful resource, and I know at the end of the program there will be more resources
Absolutely.
listed. In general, what is the state of resources for the person and the family here in the North Country, in the St. Lawrence Valley?
I think hospice is a resource. You're not required to sign up with us if you come to us and ask for information. If you want 5 wishes or any of that, you just want to talk, we're happy to do all of that. We want that conversation out there. I think when it comes time that your loved one is dying, I think people need to know and understand that they're not the resources that they think are there. We have 5 nursing homes in St. Lawrence County right now. You can't decide today that you're done caring for your mother and you're going to put her in a nursing home. That's a process that takes a long time to plan out. which we're finding at hospice. It's also the whole issue of finding additional caregivers that can come into your home. That's part of this process of deciding what is it that we want. Do we want to keep mom at home? How is that going to happen? Or do we want mom to go to a facility? Hospitals today, if you're dying and you have no symptoms that require hospitalization, you're not going to die in the hospital, which is a good thing. But who's going to take care of you at home? It's finding that autonomy, that balance. This is what I want. I may be unsafe at home, but this is what I want. How do we allow for that? And how can we pull in resources? But people really truly need to understand there's not as much out there as we think there is. And we have resource advocates, case managers that are combing every inch of social services to find something that we can use to help with a patient. So there's challenges out there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, I looked at some of the demographics from recent census. There was something in me that said that I know we're an aging population. And the baby boomers are, you call it what, the silver tsunami?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And
nobody knows what that is, but yes, the silver tsunami is coming in, and it's a big wave.
And for some reason I thought, well, maybe here in the North Country we had a larger percentage of the aging because we had a great flight of younger people.
Right.
And the data does not uphold that. We are right there in the national average.
Right.
With an aging population.
Right.
I think the only difference is if you're in a larger metropolitan area, you might have access to more resources.
You might, I think, again, it's about what it is that you want at the end of life. And I think that goes across the country. What is it that you want? You as an individual, what is it that you want? And it's learning more about it, understanding. La Crosse, Wisconsin, I think it's 90% of their residents have advanced directives. They decided that was going to be something that they wanted in their community, and if you don't have it, the community members are saying, what do you mean you don't have advanced directives? You need to sit down and talk to somebody about mapping all of that out.
And quickly, an advanced directive.
Advanced directive is saying, this is what I want at the end of life, this is what I don't want. I want to be intubated, I want to have be resuscitated, I want all measures taken to save me. Understand what that may look like. The success rate of CPR is 64%. The reality is, for somebody who's seriously ill and is older, is failing in health, that chance is probably about 5%. So that's a huge difference between 64 and 5%, and you're not going to come back the way you were before. I know on TV, I was just watching it the other day, they stopped breathing, their heart stopped, they started doing CPR, and it's like, oh, he's back and talking, and no big deal. That's not the way it works in the real world. And when you're old and frail, when you're doing those chest compressions, understand that's breaking all those bones in your chest area, your ribs. Are you prepared for the pain that comes for that? We need to be more informed. We need to ask those questions. We need to tell the doctor, I want to know, I want you to break it to me, this is what's going to happen. We need to have those conversations. Yeah. Really important.
Is there something important we haven't covered?
No, I hope that people watching this will understand that we're not here to promote any one way of dying, that what we're promoting is for everyone to become better healthcare consumers, and that you have to think about what you want at the end of life and who are the people around you that are going to honor that. How do we help people to have that good death that we had 100 years ago? We put our affairs in order. The doctors told us to go home, put your affairs in order, and you atone for your sins, you sought forgiveness, and everyone was surrounding you, and we expected that to happen. Today, we want people to fight as hard as they can, not understanding that the body just isn't going to allow for that. How do we have these conversations? And there's a wealth of materials, and you're one organization in the North Country that can help with all this is Hospice. We understand this. We're comfortable with these conversations. We see the value when people have these conversations. We see people have that good death. when they have these conversations.
Well, thank you. Thank you for promoting awareness, for opening the door to a very tough conversation.
It is a hard conversation.
Yes,
yes,
yes.
definitely.
Even with people that you think are right on board. No, my husband says, honey, you go first. You take care of it.
Yeah.
So,
My husband's the same way.
so it is tough. So, but thank you very much for sharing this with us, and I hope people who are listening will take advantage of what's available here locally.
I hope so too. Absolutely.
Yes, I know it meant a lot to me. So our time is up. Thank you. These conversations, our production of North Country Matters, filmed here at the Potsdam Public Library's Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.